There's drama in the Fortnite Creative community, and I'm here to tell you what's going on and to express my opinions on the matter. You may be wondering, why couldn't you just tweet some of this out and just be done with it? Well, there's some sensitive issues here, and there's some greater issues than just the little drama that started over the weekend. And I felt like my opinion needed to be expressed so you could see my face, you could hear my voice inflection, and really understand what I'm trying to say. I think a huge problem that we face as a society right now is that a lot of our debates are handled on places like Twitter or Facebook or texting or whatever. And whenever there are serious issues with feelings and things going on, and all you have is, 160 characters or something to explain your opinion, people don't understand sarcasm, they don't get the sincerity, and they don't get all of that emotion that comes from talking to someone face to face and seeing how sincere they are or how not sincere they are. So I wanted to make a video to explain some of my positions on what we're talking about, so that you could get the full explanation and it doesn't get misinterpreted or as like argumentative, that kind of thing. So what's the drama? A number of months ago, another creator, Sandman, reached out to me and presented an idea that he wanted to do a Fortnite Creative Awards show. Basically the Oscars or Grammys or Tonys or something, but for creative mode. He asked me if I wanted to help host the event, just to add my voice into the greater event. I wasn't super excited at the time just because I hate award shows. I don't watch the Oscars or the Grammys or anything like that, and I'll explain why in just a little bit. But he convinced me by just explaining that this was meant to be something that was a celebration of creative mode, to highlight awesome map makers and just the creative mode in general. And so I was like, you know what, that's cool. I'm all about, promoting creative mode, as you guys know. And so I agreed. So there was a nomination process where Sandman and I put together, some of our favorite maps, and we also opened it up to the public to nominate maps and map makers for this event. So a bunch of people nominated others, and then Sandman and I sat down and said, okay, here's our top 4 for each category, and there's like 14 categories. Then we opened up, voting to the public to vote for their favorite maps and map creators. The event was actually supposed to be this week, but over the weekend, Jduth, who's an amazing map maker, he's known for all of his default death runs and death runs that he does. He tweeted out that he thought that the idea for a creative mode award show was just a terrible idea, and that there shouldn't be competition in the creative community, and a number of other reasons I'll get to in a little bit. But he wanted his name removed from the category that he was nominated for, and that's it. I don't think Jduth wanted to create any controversy or drama or anything like that. He just doesn't like his name in the award show and didn't want to be a part of it, which is totally cool. But it did spark debate amongst the community, and it got kind of heated. There were people that were like, this is totally fine, it's just honoring those map makers out there that deserve it. And then there's others that were hurt feelings that they weren't included in it, or that it just wasn't healthy at all for the creative community. And I want to talk about some of the different points that were brought up and how valid all of them are, and kind of express my thoughts on the matter. So first, I want to talk about just debating in general. If someone brings up a point that you don't agree with, you should never get personal. I think this is one of the huge problems we deal with today in political debate or religious debate or anything that affects people's feelings. They get personal. They start to say something like, oh, your point isn't valid because you are a terrible person. Or this map maker's point isn't valid because of, it doesn't matter what the reason is, everyone's opinion is valid. So anytime you guys get into a debate or you disagree with someone, it's okay to express your feelings and your thoughts. In fact, I think it's extremely healthy for a community like this to have discussions on important topics But as soon as it gets into nastiness and tearing other people's down to make your point, then we've crossed a line. So I'm sorry to anyone out there who got caught in the crossfire and who maybe had hurt feelings because someone lost their cool or said something that they shouldn't have. It's just not appropriate, and I don't agree with any of that at all. All right, enough about that. I think one thing that's really important about this whole topic that was brought up by Jduth is that it opened up kind of a can of worms on another topic that has been festering in the creative community for a long time, and this kind of just brought it out. That topic is a notion that there's people that always get featured by Epic, and that there are others that are just as deserving that aren't getting featured. And I want to talk about that topic in just a bit, so stick around for that if that's what you're here for. So first I want to talk about Jada's point that creative is not a competition and that it shouldn't be made into a competition, and that something like an award show would make someone feel bad about themselves if they didn't get nominated. Basically, that ranking someone based on their own creativity shouldn't be a thing and will hurt a lot of feelings in the process. Basically, that everyone's a winner because you're a part of this community and that you make awesome creative things and so on. Jduth isn't the only person that had this opinion. There was also some great points brought up about, this is such a subjective thing. How can you even select one map over another? There's so much varying opinions on what is a good map, what is a bad map, etc. And then another point was brought up that I thought was really important is that there are so many children in this community. There's people that don't understand competition, or that competition will make a kid feel really bad about themselves if they don't get selected, or that kind of thing. First, I want to talk about the issue with the kids. I think competition for kids can be extremely unhealthy. It's really unhealthy when kids are forced to compete. I mean, think about a mom and a dad that's forcing their kid to go play soccer so that they can become the next professional player or whatever. That is incredibly unhealthy. If you're ever making a kid compete for love, like you need to go and do this thing so that mommy will be proud of you or dad will be proud of you, that kind of competition is incredibly destructive. But I think competition can be healthy for kids if it is done in the vein of, here is how you can become a better person and build them up. It's all about building kids up and helping them see what they can become. There was a map maker who direct messaged me this weekend talking about how they viewed some of these top map makers as an example of what they eventually wanted to become, and they worked really hard to make their map something that could be part of this, top tier group. And eventually their maps got to that point where they got featured. So something that seemed unattainable before and maybe could have discouraged this person from making maps became a motivation and improved their content to the point where now they're seen as a top map maker themselves. So now, while this map maker wasn't in direct competition with these other map makers, they were in competition with themselves to become a better person. And I think that's more of what this award show was about. It's about highlighting the maps that have kind of changed creative. Jduth's map is a great example of someone who took, death runs and made the default death run, which opened up a whole new category of maps for people to play and people to create. That's one of the reasons he was nominated, was because his maps were so influential for creative mode. And I think kids could look at that as an example of, I can be the next Jduth. It's not about competing to say, I'm better than so-and-so, or I'm so better than this other map maker. It's about improving yourself to where you're making content that people love. This brings us back to Jduth's original point that there shouldn't be competition in creative mode. I personally feel like an award show is not as much a competition as it is just an honoring of people. We're just taking creations that were already out there and saying, hey, this is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 that we want to honor. But this brings up the greater problem in the creative community of people wanting featured riffs to be more fair. Why does one person get featured half a dozen, even a dozen times over someone else that hasn't even been noticed once. A lot of people feel like Epic has created a competitive community because they've said, oh, submit your maps here and we'll pick our favorite ones. Even if it is just Epic's favorite ones and they're not saying it's the best ones, you're still competing for attention from Epic employees. I mean, you look at this Frosty Fortnite event that they did last December. They had almost 500,000 entries to that. 500,000 maps were made for the Frosty Fortnite event. And there was like 30 featured, if that? So you basically had like a 1 in 15,000 chance of having your map featured. Talk about some stiff competition, guys. Pretty much every map maker out there is competing for those featured spots right now. And until Epic has some sort of a browsing system built into Fortnite, it's gonna be like that. And then once there's a browsing system, it's still gonna be competing for whose maps get played the most. So there's definitely a competition in Fortnite Creative mode. So now one of the discussions that's been happening in the creative community is that there are these like pro builders, the people that have been there from the start, that have relationship with Epics, that are always getting featured over the casual map makers that maybe are making things that are just as good as the pros. It's just not fair, right? Right, guys, it's not fair. And I hate to say this, but this is a great lesson for life. You're gonna come into a lot of situations as an adult that just aren't fair. Someone's gonna get a promotion above you that you probably deserved more than them. And why? Because they maybe have a relationship with the boss that you don't. That's the same thing with a lot of these map creators. They have relationships with Epic employees and say, hey, here, check out my new map. And they're like, wow, this is a great map. I'm gonna feature it. They've networked and created relationships that have helped them to progress as a map maker and be featured more. And you probably don't have those relationships yet. It's not fair. I get it, guys. It is not fair. But I also can't fault people for using relationships and networking to further their career or their own agenda. Let's be honest, you'd probably do it too if you could. I mean, it's the same thing with YouTube. It's not fair that I don't get to spend 10 to 12 hours a day making content, streaming videos, and everything that a lot of these other professional YouTubers and streamers get to do. I don't get to do. I have to have a job. I have to pay for my mortgage and food for my family and diapers and all the stuff that comes with being a dad. It's just not fair that I have to work 2 to 3 times harder than the other content creators out there to get to the point where I want to be. So do you stop making maps, or do I stop making content because of these limitations? Or do you use it as fuel to get you to where you want to be? One of my favorite basketball players of all time was Michael Jordan. He's arguably the best basketball player to ever play the game. Yet he was cut from his high school basketball team. The best player to ever play the game was at one point cut from his team. He could have given up right then and never become the symbol that he is now. But he used it as fuel to become the best ever. So if you're not nominated for, say, a little award show made by little old Sandman and little old me, use that as fuel. If you don't get featured over another pro builder, use that as fuel. If you think you can become the best map maker in the world, the Michael Jordan of creative mode, then you're gonna have to work your tail off to get to the point where nobody can ignore your work anymore. Okay, wow, I've talked about a lot of things and maybe I didn't even address any of the concerns that were brought up over the weekend, but I called Sandman this morning and talked over some of this conversation, and here's what's gonna happen. So first, what we're gonna do, more than like highlighting any winners, we're gonna highlight the categories. We're gonna talk about death runs and adventure maps and zone wars, etc. And we're going to talk about why certain people were nominated and how they have affected creative mode for the greater good. Don't look at these nominations as people that are better than you. Look at them as great examples of what creative mode is, and then also what creative mode can become. We'll still announce winners, but it's not gonna be like a typical award show where it's like, and so wins, come up and let's hear your acceptance speech. It's just gonna be like, here's what people voted for, let's move on. We're going to honor the people that have made creative mode what it is, and then we're going to just celebrate together. I personally feel like creative mode is going to become something that's much bigger than what Fortnite even is right now. The future is bright, and let's honor those who have helped build up what it currently is. Let's look at their examples and become better ourselves. Guys, I love this community so much. It means so much to me, and it's just a lot of awesome people in it. And I hope that no one will look at not being nominated as a slight to you. You have all contributed so much to this awesome video game. And let's be honest, guys, I don't get that many views. Sandman doesn't get that many views. Not that many people are going to see it anyways. So in the end, it's not that big a deal, guys. All right, I love you. Have an awesome day.